My name is Emily Grace Turner. My sister always smiled like she had nothing to hide, until she stole my dream job, seduced my boyfriend, and left me broken. But I didn't stay broken. I stayed quiet. And planned. Because when the spotlight fades and the lies unravel, she'll learn one thing the hard way: I don't get even. I get ahead. Please subscribe to never miss any of our weekly family betrayal and revenge stories. Also, please like our videos to keep the channel growing. Welcome back to the story. In Plano, Texas, every street looks like it was plucked from a real estate brochure: fresh-cut lawns, wraparound porches, and neighbors who pretend not to watch but always do. That's where my sister and I grew up. The Turner girls. Emily Grace and Savannah Rose. A pair of southern-bred daughters raised on church potlucks, sweet tea, and yes ma'ams. To outsiders, we were picture perfect. Savannah had the long honey blonde hair and a smile that could melt asphalt in July. I was the quieter one, darker hair, deeper eyes, and always with a book or notepad in hand. She was the homecoming queen. I was the editor of the school paper. She flirted with boys and laughed too loud at parties. I memorized deadlines and rehearsed speeches in front of the mirror, but beneath our carefully ironed Sunday dresses and sisterly smiles, something bitter always lingered. Something unspoken: jealousy. It started young. When I won my 5th grade spelling bee, she threw a tantrum and refused to eat dinner. When she was crowned prom queen, I clapped until my hands stung, but inside, it burned. Our parents didn't help much. Mama loved Savannah's sparkle, her cheer routines, her pageant crowns. Daddy said I was his little brainiac, but he always seemed more proud when Savannah was on stage rather than when I brought home a straight-A report card. We were raised in the same house, under the same roof, but our lives unfolded like two separate scripts. I worked hard for everything: internships, scholarships, side jobs, tutoring, math, just to save for college. Journalism was my dream, and I chased it with every ounce of ambition I had. I wanted to be the voice that told the truth, the one who showed up when others looked away. There was meaning in that. Purpose, Savannah. She didn't know what she wanted. One year it was fashion, the next year it was real estate. She floated through life on charm, batting her lashes and waiting for things to fall into her lap. And somehow, they always did. Still, we had moments, brief, blurry glimpses of what being sisters could have felt like. When she failed her driver's test and cried in my room for an hour. When I was ghosted by my first boyfriend, and she stayed up making bad jokes to make me laugh. But those moments never lasted. They were islands in a sea of competition. As we grew older, the distance between us didn't shrink, it widened. Our paths forked, and I was relieved. She went off chasing Instagram validation, and I dove deeper into my career. We barely spoke, and that was fine with me, until she reappeared, until she smiled that same pageant smile and took everything I had worked for. I should have seen it coming, but no matter how far apart we grew, Savannah always had a way of showing up right when it would hurt the most. And this time, she didn't just cross a line, she burned the whole damn thing down. I still remember the way my hands shook when I got the email: final round of interviews for the evening anchor position at Lone Star Channel 5. Tuesday at 10 a.m., I stared at the screen in disbelief, then reread it 3 more times. I'd worked for that moment. Years of grunt work, covering City Hall budget meetings, chasing hurricane warnings, editing B-roll until midnight. Lone Star was the crown jewel of North Texas media, and I was one meeting away from sitting behind that desk, from finally being seen. I told my parents first. Mama smiled politely. Daddy beamed. But Savannah? She raised a brow and said, "Oh. That's cute." I should have known right then. The week leading up to the interview was a blur of prep, pressing suits, practicing delivery, studying every lead story from the past 6 months. I walked into that boardroom cool and composed. The station director, Andrea Miller, told me I had the voice of authority and the poise of experience. When she smiled at me on the way out, I thought it was done. Sealed. 3 days passed. Then 4. No call. No email. On the 5th day, I called Andrea's office. Her assistant answered, hesitant. We've decided to go in a different direction, she said quickly, like she couldn't wait to get off the line. No explanation. No feedback. Just, nothing. I sat on my couch, numb. My mind raced through possibilities. Was it something I said? Did I freeze up? Was there someone more qualified? And then, that evening, I opened Instagram. Savannah, draped in a crimson blouse, sat at the Lone Star Channel 5 anchor desk with a dazzling smile. The caption read, "Meet Savannah Turner, our new face of the evening news. Bringing style and substance to your screen." I nearly dropped my phone. She didn't even tell me she applied. She didn't ask for help or advice. She knew how hard I'd worked for that role. And still, she swooped in, smiled for the camera, and took it. That night, I confronted her. She was sitting on Mama's couch, sipping a glass of sweet tea like nothing happened. I stood in the doorway, my voice tight. "You knew I wanted that job." She didn't even blink. "You weren't the only one applying, Em. It's not my fault I have a better on-screen presence." I stared at her, speechless. She set down her glass, crossed her legs, and looked me dead in the eye. "Maybe you're just not memorable." That word stuck in my chest like a shard of glass. Memorable. I walked out before I did something I'd regret. But inside, something cracked. She didn't just take a job, she stole years of my work, my passion, my future. And all with a wink and a smile. This wasn't rivalry anymore, this was war. Savannah's betrayal didn't feel like a knife, it felt like a slow, deliberate slice, meant to savor every second of my pain. After that first confrontation, I tried to keep my distance. I told myself I was being dramatic. That it was just a job. That we were still family, but every time I turned on the TV, there she was. Smiling. Confident. Sitting in the chair that should have been mine. Her voice, slightly breathy, always rehearsed, echoed across our living room every evening at 6 like a cruel joke. She even used some of my old phrases, the ones I'd practiced during my time as a field reporter. "Thanks for trusting us to bring you the truth." I nearly threw the remote through the screen. It wasn't just the job she stole, it was the validation. The recognition I'd bled for. Lone Star didn't just reject me. They erased me. Overnight, it was like Emily Turner never existed, and Savannah? She soaked it all in like it was her birthright. I bumped into her at Mama's birthday brunch a week later. I tried to avoid her, but Savannah always had a flair for the dramatic. She strutted in 20 minutes late wearing a white sundress and heels too high for anyone sane. "Hey sis," she said, kissing the air beside my cheek. "Still doing behind-the-scenes stuff? Or taking a little break?" There it was. That fake innocence. That weaponized southern sweetness. I stared at her. "You went behind my back, Savannah. You knew I was up for that position." She laughed. Laughed. "You act like I stole a kidney, Em. It's business. People compete. You lost. I won. Get over it." I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might crack. "I worked for that job," I whispered. "You didn't earn it." She leaned in, her voice just low enough for only me to hear. "Doesn't matter who earns it. It matters who gets seen. You've always been so forgettable." I didn't respond. I couldn't, because the truth is, she was winning. In public, she looked polished and sweet, with that southern charm people ate up. But underneath, she was a python in lip gloss. And she'd wrapped herself around my dreams and squeezed. Everyone saw her as the rising star. And me? I was the bitter sister. The one people pitied. The one people whispered about. For the first time in years, I doubted everything, my voice, my future, my worth. Maybe I was forgettable. Maybe I didn't have it. But late that night, as I stared at the ceiling of my tiny apartment, a thought slid into my head like ice water. She'd taken everything I'd worked for. But what if I stopped playing nice? What if, this time, I smiled back, and used it to burn her world to the ground? because the only thing deadlier than a backstab is the one who saw it coming and stayed standing. I wasn't supposed to be home that night. The conference in Dallas had been cut short, bad weather and a last-minute cancellation. I didn't even tell Blake. I figured I'd surprise him. After everything with Savannah and the job, I needed a quiet night, a glass of wine, maybe his arms around me. Something real. Something mine. I pulled into the driveway around 6:45 p.m. The lights were already on inside. Odd. Blake usually waited for me to call before coming over. Still, I smiled. Maybe he'd had the same idea, to surprise me. Maybe fate was finally giving me one small win. I unlocked the door and stepped into my living room, and froze. There they were, on the couch. Savannah curled under a blanket, barefoot, laughing like she lived there. Blake sitting beside her, too close. His hand on her thigh. Shirt off. Her head tilted back, that familiar cackle filling the room. The sound I'd grown up hearing. The sound that always meant she was getting away with something. Neither of them noticed me at first, then Blake looked up. Eyes wide. Like a kid caught stealing from the cookie jar. Savannah didn't flinch. She just blinked and smirked, like she'd been expecting me. Emily, she said, calm as ever. You're back early. Like I was the problem. Like I was the one ruining their cozy little evening. Blake scrambled to his feet, stammering. It's not what it looks like, but it was. God, it was exactly what it looked like. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just stood there, like my soul had been vacuumed out. My chest was tight, my hands numb. I had so many words to say, but none of them made it past my lips. Savannah rose slowly, casually adjusting the blanket draped over her. You always did come home at the worst times, she muttered. Then she looked me straight in the eye. You two were already falling apart, Em. You just didn't want to see it. Blake opened his mouth again, but I held up a hand. Don't, I said. My voice was low, steady. Colder than I'd ever heard it. You don't get to explain. Not now. He hesitated, then grabbed his shirt and stormed out. Savannah, of course, stayed behind, smoothing her hair, checking her phone. Like nothing had happened. You really should have seen it coming, she said finally. Blake always liked a little spark. I clenched my fists so tightly I felt my nails cut into my palms. I wanted to scream. To throw something. But I didn't. Instead, I turned, walked out, and closed the door behind me. But I didn't go far. I sat in my car, staring at the steering wheel, shaking with something I hadn't felt in years. Something past heartbreak. Past rage. It was purpose. She had taken everything, my job, my man, my dignity, and now, I was going to take everything back, but not the way she did. I'd do it smarter. Colder. And permanent. I didn't cry that night. Not once. I drove aimlessly for hours. The Texas highways blurring past in the dark, Blake's betrayal still etched into my mind like a brand. Savannah's voice echoed louder with every mile. Blake always liked a little spark. There had been a time when those words would have shattered me. When I'd collapse into bed, replaying it all, wondering what I did wrong. But that version of me, the Emily who begged for fairness, who trusted in effort and loyalty, she died that night. What was left in her place wasn't broken. It was focused. Something cracked open in me, cold and razor sharp. It wasn't pain anymore. It was clarity. They didn't just hurt me. They played me. Thought I'd fold like some frayed pageant sash, just because Savannah flashed a smile and Blake dropped his charm. They believed I'd disappear quietly. Fade into the background like I always had. No, this wasn't going to end with me crying into a pint of Bluebell and watching reruns while Savannah smiled from behind my anchor desk. I pulled over at an empty gas station just off Highway 75. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me like they knew what I was about to become. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror, and for the first time in years, I liked what I saw, because pain sharpens you. Betrayal doesn't just harden your heart, it hardens your resolve. I began listing everything in my head, everything she had that wasn't hers, my job, my man, my reputation. She didn't just step over me. She wore me like a costume. And Blake? He was just another fool drawn to the glitter, blind to the venom underneath, but I saw it. I always had. Savannah had made a career out of being underestimated. And now, she'd underestimated me. That was her first mistake. I didn't know exactly how I'd do it, not yet. But I knew one thing: when I was done, she wouldn't just lose what she stole, she'd lose the illusion that she could ever replace me. By the time I got home, it was nearly 3 a.m. The apartment was dark, still, empty, except for the scent of Blake's cologne lingering in the air. I opened every window. Lit a match. Watched the candle flicker until his scent vanished. Then I sat down with my laptop and started planning. Research. Notes. Everything I knew about Savannah. Every misstep. Every skeleton in her closet. Everything she'd hidden behind those lashes and that smug smile. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to dismantle her, piece by piece, silently. Brilliantly, irrevocably, they messed with the wrong woman, and when I was done, Savannah wouldn't just fall from grace. She'd never get back up. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be precise. That's what I told myself as I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, laptop open, coffee cold, and a storm swirling behind my eyes. I wasn't going to scream into the void. I was going to rip Savannah's pretty little castle down, brick by brick. And I knew exactly where to start. Her resume. She'd never been a good liar, just a confident one. That was her magic. Say something with enough sugar and sparkle, and people stopped checking the details. But I always checked the details. Her Lone Star Channel 5 bio claimed she graduated top of her class in communications at UT Austin. I knew for a fact she barely scraped through junior college, and even then, it was only because I edited half her essays. I dug deeper. Her LinkedIn listed internships she never did, awards she never won, skills she never had. I cross-referenced everything. Called contacts. Checked class rosters. She'd fabricated entire chunks of her background. No one ever questioned it, because who questions a beauty queen with a microphone and a smile? But that wasn't the real bombshell. The real bombshell was her demo reel, the slick video that got her the job. I watched it twice. Then a third time. Something about the phrasing felt too polished, too structured. So I ran some of her monologue through a plagiarism checker, and there it was. Word-for-word lines lifted from a small-town news reporter in Florida. I found the original on YouTube, timestamped 2 years before Savannah ever touched a newsroom. The cadence, the pauses, identical. She'd stolen someone else's voice and used it to replace mine. I downloaded every clip. Saved every document. Organized it all in a folder labeled Queen of Nothing. I didn't yell. I didn't rant. I just worked. Silently. Efficiently. Then I crafted the email. Simple, anonymous, laced with links, screenshots, and quiet suggestions. I sent it to Lone Star's HR department and CC'd their code of ethics officer. Just enough to raise questions. Just enough to plant doubt, and then I waited. For days, Savannah paraded across my screen like royalty. Interviews. Press photos. Hashtag Savannah Strong trending on local Twitter. But beneath the glitter, a fuse had been lit. On Friday, Lone Star's midday bulletin was delayed. Just 5 minutes. But I saw the crack. The anchor stuttered. Looked off camera. Savannah didn't appear at all. No explanation. Then, a small blog posted an article, Rising News Star under review for resume discrepancies. It didn't mention her name. But I knew. I recognized my own phrasing in the leaks. I leaned back in my chair, heart steady. This wasn't the climax. It was just the first domino. Savannah had always lived in the spotlight. But now, that light was about to turn harsh, unforgiving. And me, I'd stay in the shadows. Until she begged for the darkness. Savannah might have been the thief. But Blake was the door she walked through, and like every door, he had a key, his weakness, attention. Especially from women, it had always been there. Harmless compliments he never deflected, the way his eyes lingered too long on waitresses, the "it's just a follow" excuses when I questioned his flirty DMs. I ignored it for years. But now? I planned to exploit it, so I made her, Brianna Lee, 25. Gorgeous. Smart. Moved to Dallas from Miami. She had 3 perfectly curated Instagram posts, a smile just seductive enough, and a bio that read, "Small town girl in a big city. Let's connect, kiss mark." It took me a night to build her. A few hours more to link her to everything Blake liked: fitness, crypto, bad country music, and women who told him he was different. I followed him late Sunday night. By Monday morning, Blake had already followed back. By noon, he'd liked 5 pictures. By dinner, he was in her DMs. I didn't even have to try. He came running. It started innocently enough. "Blake, hey Brianna, you're stunning. Welcome to Texas." Smiling face with smiling eyes. "Brianna, thanks, cowboy. Know any good places to get lost?" "Blake, I can think of a few, if you're into trouble." Winking face. By Thursday, I had screenshots of him asking for a quiet meetup. By Saturday, he sent a mirror selfie, shirtless, of course, with the caption, "Don't tell anyone." Winking face. "Savannah would kill me." I nearly laughed. Savannah had paraded their relationship around like it was her prize. Date nights, selfies, even a live appearance at a charity gala. Power couple, the comments said. Match made in Texas. But Blake? He was just a boy playing dress up in someone else's fantasy. I compiled the messages, the photos, the timestamps. Then, in a move I knew she'd never expect, I mailed them. Printed. In a pink envelope. No return address. Just her name. I imagined her opening it in her dressing room at the station, thumbing through the flirty messages. Blake's selfie, his promises to meet Brianna. That sick feeling curling in her stomach. That realization, she wasn't special either. I didn't hear from either of them for 2 days. But the signs came quickly. Savannah missed a Friday show, illness, they said. Blake scrubbed her from his Instagram. Then came the passive-aggressive quotes in her stories. "Trust is like glass. Once it's broken." Followed by "Some men are just cheap suits in a nice closet." By the end of the week, her power couple narrative had collapsed. Quietly. Publicly, and me, I watched it all from behind my screen, sipping my coffee, feeling nothing but satisfaction. Savannah had played dirty, but I was rewriting the rules. And the next time she smiled on camera, the world would see what I always had, cracks. Savannah always said the camera loved her, but that was before the cracks started to show. It began subtly, just enough for someone like me to notice. A slight tremble in her voice during the evening intro. A missed cue here, a stumble there. Her signature smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. She looked cornered, and people noticed. The viewers who once flooded the comment sections with hearts and fire emojis were now asking, "Is Savannah okay? Or she seems off lately." What they didn't know was that Savannah's perfect world was collapsing just out of frame. The station had gone quiet after receiving the anonymous packet, my packet. But I knew the silence was never safety. It was the kind that came right before a storm. HR had started an internal review. Her credentials were being quietly verified. Her reel was being picked apart, and on top of it all, Blake was gone, not just from her Instagram, but from her life. He moved out of her apartment and into a buddy's condo in McKinney. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he told people she was too much drama and that she wasn't who he thought she was. Irony at its finest. Without Blake by her side, Savannah's Golden Girl act started to unravel faster. She snapped at the makeup girl. She rewrote scripts mid-broadcast. One night, live on air, she completely blanked during a major segment on a highway pileup. Dead silence. She stared at the camera like a deer in headlights. The weatherman had to jump in and cover. By morning, it was trending. Hashtag Savannah Slips. It wasn't just viewers now. It was bloggers, media critics, even old classmates chiming in online. And once that blood hit the water, the sharks swarmed. sponsors started pulling out of segments she hosted. Advertisers pushed back on having her read live promos. Lone Star pulled her face from the website banner. Her smiles grew tighter, her makeup heavier, but no amount of concealer could cover the bruising beneath. One evening, I watched from my couch as she tried to host a special report. Her eyes were glassy, her voice wavered, and for a brief second, I swear she looked straight into the camera like she was begging for someone to save her, but no one came. Not Blake. Not the viewers. Not even Mama and Daddy, and definitely not me. She'd built a throne from stolen things, my job, my man, my dreams. Now it was sinking beneath her, and she couldn't figure out why the world had stopped clapping. That's the thing about spotlights, they're warm until they're not. Then they're just hot enough to burn, and me, I stayed right where I was. Silent. Watching, because I wasn't done, not yet. It came in the form of a clean, white envelope, no bells, no fireworks, just a letter with the KTXN Austin logo in the corner and my name printed neatly across the front. Inside, an offer letter, anchor. Prime time. 6-figure salary. Full creative control. Everything I had wanted from Lone Star. And more. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the words, barely breathing. For years, I had dreamed of climbing the ladder in Dallas. But this was the elevator straight to the top, at a station twice the size, with triple the audience. And it was mine. Earned. No shortcuts. No sugar-coated charm. I didn't scream or call anyone. I just folded the letter and smiled, calm and quiet, like a woman who knew her time had come. And across the state, Savannah was unraveling live on air, trying to patch holes in a ship that had already sunk. Lone Star suspended her a week later, officially pending internal review, but we all knew what that meant. Her sponsors dropped her. Her Instagram turned into a graveyard of fake smiles and vague quotes. Blake was still gone. The apartment she once bragged about was now listed for rent, and me, I packed up my little apartment in Plano with a lightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. Each box felt like a piece of my old self being left behind, the one who stayed quiet, who doubted her voice, who let people take what she earned. Austin was a fresh start, but it wasn't an escape. It was a declaration. My first night on air, the city skyline glowed behind me through the studio windows. I adjusted my mic, looked straight into the camera, and smiled, not the way Savannah did, with teeth and glitter and lies, but steady. Grounded. Real. And when I said, "Good evening, Austin. I'm Emily Turner," I meant it. I was no longer the girl in Savannah's shadow. I was the woman she tried to erase, rebuilt from the ground up, sharper, smarter, untouchable. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about her. I wonder if she watches me. If she sees me thriving in a spotlight she was never built to hold. If she realizes that stealing my life didn't get her any closer to building her own. Some betrayals leave scars, others, they leave purpose. Savannah taught me something she never meant to, that silence is power. That pain is fuel. That revenge doesn't always come with fire, it comes with success. Now, I sign off every night with the confidence of someone who survived a war no one saw coming, and I don't look back, because some sisters aren't sisters, they're storms in pretty dresses, and some people, they're not meant to walk beside you, they're meant to watch you rise, from the ruins they tried to bury you in. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, revenge, and redemption, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful true life narrations. Got a story of your own? Share it below, you never know, yours might be next. And remember, sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest revenge.